just going to wait until I see somebody say hi to me until we get started, so I know that you can definitely hear me. Hi Susan, Mary Ellen. Hey! Hi Catherine, you can hear me. Okay, welcome everybody. And let's get started. So it's just about enough of looking at me. Hi Pauline, Dawn, Ruth, Shalom. Welcome, thank you for joining. Okay, I'd like to dive right into it. Hi Ronnie. I'm feeling better, thank you. Not quite 100% yet. But welcome, 7th of October. And obviously that is a date that has taken on a huge significance in the last year. And obviously because of the shocking attack on Israel by Hamas. And given the trauma that the Jewish community has been through in the last year, and the horrendous anti-Semitism that has reared its head all over the world, I thought it would be a good time to revisit, oh sorry, I thought I'd lost my mic, to revisit some of the Jewish monuments in Amsterdam and to remind us that these things are never meant to happen again. I'm going to start with the most controversial and the most bizarre monument. And this one in front of me here is called the Monument of Jewish Gratitude. And I'm going to read a little bit from this plaque in front of it here. Okay, just try and stabilize the camera. On the 23rd of February 1950, this monument of Jewish recognition was unveiled. The monument offered to the city of Amsterdam in the name of the Jews of the Netherlands to their protectors in the years of occupation, 1940 to 1945, was an initiative of a number of Amsterdam's Jews led by the city councillor Maurits de Hartog. The monument was the first memorial to be erected in Amsterdam after the Second World War. Was controversial from the moment it was revealed. The mayor accepted the monument with mixed feelings at its unveiling because although a lot of people offered resistance, many others fell short, he said. The images and text on the monument especially emphasize the solidarity between the Jewish and non-Jewish Dutch people. But large parts of Dutch Jews were more concerned with the commemoration of the many deaths than with expressing gratitude. Okay, it is a very bizarre monument. During the Second World War, 75% of the Netherlands' Jewish population were murdered in Nazi death camps. In Amsterdam, that was even higher, that was 85%. And after the war, Dutch Jewish survivors were often met with suspicion and actually even hostility. Parents were sometimes unable to retrieve their children that they placed in hiding. Their homes had been looted and plundered. Jewish organizations were in disarray, and they were discriminated against when trying to get homes or jobs. There was actually a lingering anti-Semitism even here after the war because of the results of the avalanche of Nazi propaganda during those wars. So yeah, the powers that be suggested that a memorial expressing Jewish gratitude would be an appropriate gesture. Now the sculptor, there was a sculptor, Jaap Kaas, he made it through the war in hiding. And he was asked to design a monument and proposed that he should list each name of the 100,000 Dutch Jews that did not come back. And this was rejected as provocative instead of grateful. Okay, and then this other sculptor, Johan Wertheim, created this monument with the theme of protection, which he felt was the highest form of human caring, and he was trying to show a connection between Jewish and Christian ethics. Now let's take a closer look. Up here, the text says, to the protectors of the... It's difficult to read without laughing, it's so stupid. Oh, you know, to the protectors of the Jews of the Netherlands during the occupation. And then coming over here, there's a praying figure. And it says, underneath in Dutch obviously, based on God's will. Coming over here, united with your defense, protected by your love, encouraged by your resistance, and mourning with you. Okay. Now, there were no representatives of Jewish organizations at the unveiling, not surprisingly. And the Netherlands had the highest percentage of its Jewish population killed compared to any other Western European country. So there were 140,000 Jews living in the Netherlands in 1940. 104,000 died during the war. Of those, 102,000 were murdered in concentration or extermination camps. 5,000 survived those camps. 16,000 survived in hiding, and 16,000 managed to survive in mixed marriages. And there were 246 Roma and Sinti also deported, and of them only 30 survived. Okay. So that is just beyond bizarre as a monument, and I just thought I'd start with that just to show how insane the world was then. And you know, a lot of the youth think nowadays with, you know, the international condemnation, there seems to be a similar insanity. It just defies belief. God knows, who knows how we will look back on it. But I do want to talk about another topic on the way, because I've got a bit of a walk to do, and that is the diamond industry. Because, I'm just going to work out where I can cross the road, it was so integral to the Jewish community here. It was a massive part of it. And the building that we're looking at now is the Diamond Exchange. So just a little bit about the diamond industry. When the first Jewish refugees made it here, and that was Sephardic refugees who were expelled, or not expelled, sorry, who were fleeing from Antwerp when it fell to the Spanish Habsburgs. And then later we got waves of Ashkenazi refugees, first of all fleeing the 30-year war in Germany, and then periodically fleeing pogroms from Eastern Europe. So they came here, and there was some prejudice. If you were Jewish, you couldn't join a guild. But however, given how much anti-Semitism there was in the world at the time, despite that not being able to join a guild, and despite not having civic rights, it was still considered really one of the safest and one of the best places in the world to be if you were Jewish. So the diamond industry didn't have a guild, so that's why it became Jewish dominated, because it could be. It was quite a small industry. And then it got a couple of big boosts, and that was when diamonds were discovered in South America, and then again in South Africa. So this, I want to show you some artwork around the door, the entrance here. So here we have the Staff of Mercury, which is about commerce. And over here we have diamond cutting tools. Beautiful building from 1911. It had its own banking section. You can see that at the end here where it says Incasso. Also had its own post office, telegram office, and meeting rooms for weighing diamonds, restaurant, billiards room, telephone booths, over 100 offices, and a really big trading hall. So it's quite something. The diamond industry is remarkable. All these huge deals happened, and everything was done on a handshake. And your reputation within the industry was everything. If you ever did anything underhand, you would never be able to work in that industry again. The outbreak of the First World War saw a slump, and there were refugees from Belgium who actually took shelter here and lived here, probably on mattresses on the floor of the exchange. In the 1930s, there was the Great Depression, and the union and the exchange set up a committee to provide free credit for small businesses. And so that did a lot of social good. And that went on right until the Germans disbanded it in 1941. Now in the 40s, with the German occupation, actually before I'm going to walk a little bit, and I just want to zoom in and show you there's like a whole roof, kind of terrace made and what have you. I've not been up there, I'm very curious. So anyway, let me walk and talk a little bit. You know, during the Nazi occupation, they restricted the diamond trade, but there was still black market trading. And in February, 13th of February 1941, actually, the Jewish Council meeting took place in the main hall. Now, the Jewish Council was very controversial. This is what the Nazis made. It was a council made up of Jews who had to then implement Nazi policies. And in Amsterdam, they were held to account after the war for having done that too efficiently. They told the people to hand in their weapons to the police. The people just couldn't believe what was going on, that they were being told that. In 1941, there was the first raid, and a lot of people were in the canteen, and a clever waitress passed coffee around, and the dealers put their diamonds in their coffee cups, and they were reunited with the original owners after the Germans left. Unfortunately, a Dutch Nazi informed on her, and she was arrested and on the next train to Auschwitz. In 1942, there was another raid and all the diamonds were confiscated. And in 1943, most of the exchange members were deported to death camps. Now, this area we're walking through was the most densely populated part of the Jewish district. And you'll notice that they're all modern buildings because the area was in such poor condition after the war. Bear in mind that those houses were empty and had been plundered for anything wooden to burn in the last winter of the war, which was so bitterly cold. So that's the diamond exchange. What I'd also like to talk a little bit about is the Diamond Workers Union. And that kind of went hand in hand with the exchange. Now, in 1894, two men, Henry Pollack and Jan van Zutphen, they formed the General Dutch Diamond Workers Union. Now, Pollack was inspired by the well-run English trades unions that he had come into contact with during his time as an employee in London. And this was the first large, well-organized union in the Netherlands. And basically its approach to how to structure things had a really big influence on the modern trade union movements here. So after 4 years, the union already had 8,000 members. And there were numerous strikes in the early years. And then they managed to reach agreements about first a 10-hour, and then a 9-hour, and then an 8-hour working day. They negotiated wage increases and also time off. And the employers realized pretty quickly that it was going to be always better to negotiate with the union than to fight it. And what Polak's view was that strikes should be avoided, and just the threat of a strike should be enough to achieve improvements in wages and working conditions. So this union was pretty internationally connected to London and Antwerp. And these two men, Polak and Zutphen, were the spiritual fathers of the Dutch social security system. They were responsible for a great increase in social awareness among both employers and employees. They weren't militant, they were great negotiators. And in 1905, there was a TB epidemic, and the union collected funds to open a clinic for the workers. It took this function of also providing insurance to cover illness and accidents and unemployment. And the reason I bring all this up is there was an enormous contribution made to our modern structure here in Amsterdam that is a debt of gratitude to the Jewish community of that period. I mean, if you look at it from a fairness perspective and the rights of workers or poorer people, because the Jewish community was, on the whole, bitterly poor. We live in a capitalist state now, but there's a lot of socialist elements that knock off the harder edges that make it possible to live here and have a quality of life. And a lot of that comes from Jewish Amsterdam. If you think of our public housing sector here, a lot of emphasis was put by Polak and Zutphen also on improving the lot of the general person. So I think that's a very important element of our history that's often overlooked. Okay, now we've seen the most controversial and weird and horrible monument. I'm glad it's there, by the way. I'm glad it's there with an explanation, that these things don't get hidden away. And now moving on to the newest monument. Here it is. It's called the Holocaust Names Monument, or Monument of Names. Now, in Jerusalem, you have Yad Vashem, and there are currently about 400 people in their Hall of Names. And just to break that name down, Yad means monument, Va and Shem name, so monument of names. So here's the National Holocaust Names Monument. So it's exactly the same concept as Yad Vashem. The monument is made up of 4 letters hovering above. You can see here the highly polished stainless steel hovering above some walls. And here are the letters here. I'm going to show you. Saying Lezecher in Hebrew, in memoriam. So these are supported on 2-meter-high brick walls. We're going to have a closer look at those in just a bit. I'd just like to give you, well, actually no, let's walk into the monument now. A closer look. So these brick walls, each brick has the name and the date of birth and the age of death of every victim. And just bear in mind that every one of these bricks is a life cut short, okay? It's not a life naturally led. Okay. Now, bricks are used throughout the Netherlands as a building material, and that's why Daniel Liebeskind chose them. He designed the monument. He also designed the Jewish Museum in Berlin. And the idea of the bricks was that they're used throughout, and they connect Amsterdam's past and present. Okay, and this gap between the wall and the bricks symbolizes the fracture in Dutch history and culture of the Dutch people of this period. Now, what Libeskind said at the opening, he was talking about each brick being a life cut short, and that these are a return of these people to the city. His idea was that a reflection of the city shines onto their names, to see them as people who were alive and who had dreams. And that memory is not a footnote, it's the foundation of our lives. There's so much division and hatred and anti-Semitism in the world today, so I think this memorial is a memorial against indifference. It's also an inspiration, the light of this beautiful city, to bring back those who are eternally part of this place. So I took that from Libeskind's speech at the opening. Now, there are other monuments in Amsterdam. I'm just going to briefly run through what they are. There's the Auschwitz monument in Wertheim Park, and that has 6 cracked mirrors reflecting a broken sky. There's the Holland Schouwburg, and that was a theater that was used as a prison. And that now has an eternally burning flame and 6,700 family names of the 104,000 victims. Now, the Auschwitz Committee began the process of creating this monument way back in 2009. Basically, they noticed so many people visiting the wall of Dutch names at Auschwitz. And they wanted to make this place a sort of grave, a place of commemoration, that the victims of those families that have gone, they were murdered, but going to see their names at Auschwitz is like going to the gates of hell. So there's now this feeling that they've been brought home. That the Roma and the Sinti were also included is very important to these communities because they're often forgotten, in Holocaust memorials, and they now feel remembered. Now, the first location of this was actually meant to be Wertheim Park. This drew protests from residents who said it was too big for the site. And then this location right here was where the Monument of Jewish Gratitude was. And it was proposed to replace that, to move it back to actually its original position, and to have this monument here in its place. Now, and I'll just pan up to show you the residents. This drew big protests from the residents. Their complaints were it's too big, it'll draw too many tourists, there'll be traffic problems, there'll be dark, unsafe corners, you'll have to cut down 25 trees. And there was a 15-year fight for permissions, overcoming these objections. Now, the Auschwitz Committee never gave up. There were court cases, lots and lots of distress, 350,000 euros wasted in legal fees, and they won, but that had to come out of the pot. It was delayed for such a long time that many people died without seeing their relatives honored in this way. I think those people look very stupid now because their objections are nonsense. It's none of those things. So yes, there's every known name listed. They listed alphabetically, and they just go on and on and on. People come and pay their respects here and leave a stone. I gathered some views of Jewish friends here. You know, for me as a Gentile, it was a very disturbing monument in many ways, very thought-provoking, made me feel weepy for quite a long time. And, you know, but my opinion is important because a monument like this must speak to Gentiles as well. But it's also, you know, what is it to Jewish Amsterdammers? It was built 3 years ago, Laurie. Jewish Amsterdammers. And there was one man who was interviewed at the opening saying that he was relieved that he could visit his mother's name and touch the brick on his visit, and this gave him comfort. Another woman I know, we have a mutual friend, I asked her if I could talk to her about it. And she was raised abroad. Her parents, her father was Jewish, her mother Catholic, they managed to leave. And she didn't know until she was 15 that her grandparents and uncles were victims of the Holocaust. They went to Argentina. And she's lived here for about 4 decades now, and she visits the monument often. And she says it's made her feel closer to Amsterdam. The most important person to me, a dear friend, I asked her if she felt that sort of way about it, and she sort of scoffed, and she said, oh, you know, she has at least 100 family members listed here, as her grandmother came from a family of 12. And out of the people I spoke to, I think she's lived with the most heavy weight of the Holocaust. And for her, touching a brick with a name was not important. But she said the effect of the monument is comforting in the way that it's so visual. You know, it makes the issue of the Holocaust visible in a very powerful way. And from now on, everyone who sees it will be sharing the burden of it. And it's a very real acknowledgement of a situation that feels unreal. Now, let me... I see there are questions coming, and I'll deal with that question, Dawn, because it'll come up soon. There is a wall further down with empty bricks for new names that are found. And basically, you know, fellow Dutch citizens mostly watched, you know, as people were taken away never to return. And yeah, this monument is completely unapologetic. And it's a fantastic replacement for the Monument of Gratitude. As far as its function to warn and educate go, I think it's pretty powerful. What we do with that warning is what counts, and that's up to us, not the monument. When I look up at this, you know, I think obviously Liebeskind, with the Auschwitz Memorial and the cracked and broken sky, you know, that's like a cry of disbelief. When I look up at this, and I've never seen this written, but it just occurred to me, you know, when I was here a few days ago, is that obviously Liebeskind must have known, you know, by making these letters and this shiny, shiny stainless steel, that they would reflect in these shapes that actually make the facets of a diamond in the sky. So I look at that sort of, it's like a follow-on from the Auschwitz Memorial, but it's in a powerful, much stronger way. What it says to me is that the Jewish people are strong, and they will rise up and shine. Now what I would like to do, this wall is the most disturbing wall to me, because it just drives home the extent of, you know, how this community was just destroyed. This wall starts up here with Anna Polak. Obviously that is a very common Jewish name. and just about the entire wall is made up of the surname Polak. So I was here earlier and I was looking and I saw Rosa. And I thought, where is she? Rosa, 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 here. And then I thought, well, let's lay a stone in remembrance of Rosa. And then I thought, well, why not read out the list? So we have Rebecca Polak, who was murdered at the age of 20. She was born in 1923. Another Rebecca Polak, murdered age 4. Another Rebecca, 14. Regina, 57. Reina, 41. And then I thought I would read down, but it just goes on and on and on. And then I got down to here. And we get to Solomon. Okay, here as he goes. Solomon Polak, 74. Solomon, 79. Solomon, 12. Solomon, 64. Solomon, 43. Solomon, 25. 66. And we go back to the top. And they just go on and on and on. These people from the same community who shared the same name. So I'd like to do what I intended and leave a stone in the memory of young Rosa, who was 2 years old. I know there are questions in this chat, and I'm actually going to deal with those on a future tour. Okay, if you don't mind, I'll come back to those and we can revisit this subject. What I would like to do is end this tour now with a minute's silence for all those people on these walls, and also for the victims of the October 7th attack, and also just to spend a minute thinking of the situation that the 101 hostages who are still alive and being held in terror tunnels and what they are going through. So if we could just do that as I slowly walk around the monument, and then I will see you next week.